What would you do if a stranger pulled over on a dark, empty road and called out your name before you ever spoke a word? How could he know who you are, where you live, even the secrets you've never told anyone? And more chillingly, what if cameras later showed you standing there alone with no car in sight? These are not just campfire stories. Across America, from forgotten highways in Texas to small towns in Massachusetts, people have reported encounters that defy reason. Encounters where strangers knew far too much. Tonight, I'll take you inside one of the most disturbing accounts, a story that blurs the line between stalker and something far more sinister. Stay until the very end, because every detail will make you question whether you could be the next one to hear your name whispered in the dark. If you love and care about real horror stories, give me a like, a subscribe, and share this video so I have the motivation to bring you even more terrifying tales. Now, let's begin. It was a chilly November night in Salem, Massachusetts, when Emily Carter, a 21-year-old college student, walked out of her late shift at a diner. The streets were quiet, the kind of quiet that makes your own footsteps sound too loud. She pulled her coat tight and started toward the bus stop. That's when a black pickup slowed down beside her. The window rolled down, and a man leaned out, smiling in a way that wasn't quite friendly. "Emily," he said, "do you need a ride?" Think about that for a moment. He called her by name. Emily hadn't introduced herself, hadn't said a single word. The only light came from a flickering street lamp, and yet somehow he knew exactly who she was. Police reports later revealed something unsettling. Surveillance footage from a gas station across the street caught Emily standing there, but the truck doesn't appear on the video. Just her, turning her head towards someone or something that the camera never recorded. Even more disturbing, investigators found faint traces of tire tracks pressed into damp leaves nearby, but the pattern didn't match any standard tire model in the police database. I can't help but imagine what she must have felt. I've had nights walking home when a stranger's gaze made me uncomfortable, but this? The idea of someone knowing your name, your life, without you ever telling them? It crosses into a different level of fear. It's as if reality itself betrayed her. Emily hesitated, and here's where the story shifts from ordinary unease to true horror. Because instead of walking away, she opened the passenger door, and that's where her 3 minutes of destiny began, leading us deeper into a ride no one should ever take. Now let's follow what happened once she stepped inside that truck, and why every mile forward only made the mystery darker. As Emily shut the door behind her, the sound of the lock clicking felt louder than it should have. The truck's interior smelled faintly of gasoline and something metallic, like old pennies. The man gripped the wheel, eyes fixed on the road, and for the first few minutes, they drove in silence. The radio crackled with a late-night news bulletin. Another young woman had gone missing just 5 miles from there. Emily's stomach turned. Then the man began to talk. Not small talk, not idle chatter. He spoke about her classes at Salem State, the roommate she argued with last week, even the necklace her grandmother had given her. Details so intimate they froze the blood in her veins. How could he possibly know? Some people later suggested maybe he had followed her online, but back then, her social media presence was nearly non-existent. Investigators pieced together what little they could. A traffic camera on Route 1 captured the truck briefly, 2 headlights cutting through the fog. But the footage glitched just as it passed, leaving only a blurred silhouette of the passenger. Strangely, no license plate was visible, even though earlier frames had shown plates on other cars with perfect clarity. And when police retraced the road days later, they discovered fragments of glass embedded in the shoulder, as if a window had shattered. But there was no report of an accident that night. I've thought a lot about this part. If it were me in that seat, hearing someone recite the things I thought were private, I don't know if I'd have the courage to stay calm. I think many of us underestimate how paralyzing pure fear can be. Emily didn't scream, she didn't jump out, she just stared out the window as the town lights faded and the darkness pressed closer. That was the beginning of the 5 mysterious miles, a stretch of road where reality itself seemed to falter. And what happened when those miles ended would push the story into something even harder to explain. Now let's move into what the cameras and eyewitnesses reported next, the part of the story that has kept people awake for decades. 72 seconds. That's how long the most chilling piece of footage lasts. A security camera mounted outside a small convenience store on the edge of town caught it. At first, it looks ordinary. Emily walking along the sidewalk, headlights flickering in the distance. Then, something strange happens. The lights stretch across the frame as if a truck is pulling up beside her, but no vehicle is ever visible. Just Emily, pausing, tilting her head like she's listening to someone. And then she vanishes from the frame as if swallowed by the darkness. For years, investigators replayed those 72 seconds over and over. They slowed it down, enhanced the shadows, even used thermal imaging. Nothing explained why the reflection of headlights appeared on the wet pavement without a single car in sight. A police officer later testified that the timestamp skipped forward twice, shaving off nearly 15 seconds of real time, almost like the footage itself had been edited by something beyond human hands. And here's the part that still unsettles me most. When forensic teams dusted the sidewalk, they found a smear of fingerprints along a railing near where Emily had been standing. But those prints didn't belong to her or anyone in the national database. Some experts claimed the ridges and loops didn't even match typical human patterns. I've seen my share of creepy videos online, but this isn't the kind you forget after scrolling. Imagine being Emily's parents, sitting in a police station, staring at that grainy screen as your daughter walks off into nothingness. That image alone could keep a family awake for the rest of their lives. And if this were just one strange video, maybe we could dismiss it. But the truth is, there were other accounts, other people who experienced something eerily similar, which brings us to the next part of this story, the unsettling pattern of cases across America that echo Emily's disappearance. Emily's story might sound like an isolated nightmare, but sadly it isn't. There are echoes of her experience buried in police reports and whispered in small-town legends, 2 that always give me chills. The first comes from Ohio in 1998. A girl named Sarah Miller was walking home after a late shift at a grocery store. According to her roommate's testimony, Sarah received a call on the payphone outside, and the man on the other end greeted her by name before she even said hello. Minutes later, a neighbor saw her getting into a dark sedan. She was never seen again. Security footage from that night shows Sarah speaking to someone, but just like with Emily, the car itself doesn't appear in the recording. Investigators later found a set of shoe prints pressed deep into the mud, prints so large they seemed impossible for a single person to make. The second case is from Texas in 2007. A teenage boy named Daniel Lopez claimed he had been offered a ride home from a stranger who called him Danny, a nickname only his family used. He refused, but when police checked traffic cameras, they found something haunting. The footage showed a boy identical to Daniel climbing into the stranger's truck at the same intersection, even though Daniel was at home that very night, accounted for by his entire family. To this day, the case remains unsolved, leaving behind only a few fragments of testimony and a community still shaken by the mystery. When I first read these stories, I couldn't help but feel the weight of them. It's one thing to hear about urban legends passed around the internet, but another to find reports, eyewitness accounts, even physical evidence, all pointing to the same pattern. It makes you wonder, are these coincidences? Or are we looking at something that slips just outside the edges of reality? And that's what brings us back to Emily, because as frightening as these parallels are, what happened next in her own story went beyond anything the others revealed. Let's step into that moment, her single chance to escape or to be lost forever.
Emily sat frozen in the passenger seat, her hands clenched so tightly that her nails left crescents in her palms. The truck rattled across an old bridge, the kind with iron railings that groaned under the weight of passing cars. That's when she finally noticed something no one could explain later. His reflection was missing. The windshield mirrored her pale, terrified face, but the driver's side showed nothing. No shadow, no outline, just empty glass. That realization broke her paralysis. She yanked at the handle, the door flying open against the rush of cold night air. For a moment, she dangled halfway out, gravel spraying beneath the tires. The man's voice roared behind her, calling her name again and again, each time louder, each time more distorted, like a recording played at the wrong speed. With one desperate push, she hurled herself onto the road. Later, investigators found blood on the bridge railing and strands of Emily's hair snagged in the ironwork. A truck driver passing an hour later swore he saw a girl stumbling barefoot along the shoulder, though when police arrived, there was no trace. Tire marks were visible on the pavement, but they stopped abruptly in the center of the bridge, as if the vehicle had simply ceased to exist. I can't imagine the courage it must have taken for her to jump. Most of us would freeze, convinced there's no escape. But Emily proved that sometimes the only way out of the nightmare is to throw yourself into the unknown. Did she escape a predator? Or something beyond human comprehension? We may never know. What we do know is that her leap marks the dividing line in this story, the moment between being claimed forever and being given one last chance to return. And that haunting choice leads us directly into the final piece of this mystery, the unanswered questions that still echo today, and the chilling warning they hold for all of us. To this day, the case leaves behind two questions that no one has ever been able to answer. The first is simple, but terrifying. Who or what was the man who knew Emily's name before she spoke it? Police combed through records, ran sketches past witnesses, and even tested partial DNA from the blood on the bridge. Nothing matched. No suspect has ever been identified. It's as if he never existed. The second question is even harder to face. Why do the cameras, the tire marks, and the fingerprints all suggest something was there, yet at the same time, nothing tangible remains? Technology doesn't lie, and yet in this case, it failed us. It left a gap in reality that no one can comfortably explain. I think about this often. What if it were me walking home late at night? Would I have the presence of mind to run, or would I be frozen by the horror of hearing my name whispered by a stranger in the dark? And maybe that's the true warning here. Not just Emily's story, but the fact that patterns like this exist across the country, whispered about in reports that rarely make the headlines. So I leave you with this. If someone calls you by name when you know you've never met them before, do you trust your instincts and walk away? Or do you risk becoming the next unsolved mystery? If you love and care about real horror stories like this one, please give me a like, a subscribe, and share this video. It's the best way to help me bring you more tales that might just keep you awake at night. And remember, sometimes the scariest thing isn't what we see, but what we can't explain.